Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Thursday morning webinar. I'm Chloe Tetro. I'm the health coach here with Ready Care. For today's lovely topic, we're going to be looking at the topic of stress, basically how to recognize stress, how it's helpful to us because it can be, and how it can get in our way. So we're going to look at quite a lot of material. So I've had plenty coffees to try and speed up the tempo of my voice ever so slightly. So we look at recognizing not all bad, how it helps us, not all good, how it can get in the way. So that's long term, short term, how it affects us. We'll have a look at the stressed brain, for want of a better word, how stress affects the brain, but actually how knowing that can be a really, really good leverage point towards applying that knowledge and reverse engineering the brain into utilizing those same mechanisms to help combat a little bit of that stress. We'll do a little bit of a point on low carb and stress because the two are very well positively correlated. So low carb can help high stress. So we'll have a look at that, and we'll finish off with just a few questions to prompt a little bit of introspection around enabling relaxation. So to begin with, I suppose recognizing stress. We, by and large, are steeped in the word and the culture of stress. You know, with the advent of total connectivity and you know the new types of stresses that young people can grow up with massive social pressures. These social media types that will kind of say you have to do all of these things, high success, high earner, high goals, and the level of stresses that we've been under really societally has exponentially grown since the advent of the internet age now, in saying that I can't ask somebody 300 years ago the levels of stresses they were under. But really recognizing what is stress. Are we under stress? The first step to changing anything is realizing that we're in that particular situation. And oftentimes, because we're steeped in a culture of stress, it can be very hard for us to understand or fully acknowledge when we are experiencing it. It's like that story of the fish swimming through water who doesn't know he's in water, or will say, "What's water?" So it's that kind of thing of being so submerged in something that it's very difficult for us to even understand that we're we're player one, we're right in the frame of it. So some of the psychological signs to look out for. The stress will most prominently feature in our emotional state. So feelings of anxiety, irritability, and depression can be early indicators. So really being in touch with ourselves of going, am I more anxious than usual? Am I more irritable? Difficulty concentrating, and we'll look at why in a while, but if you're kind of saying, jeepers, my attention is absolutely everywhere, I have some memory problems, and this huge sense of being overwhelmed and out of control, these are all really common psychological factors of stress. Now, we've a tendency to maybe pathologize those as you know, individual things, but really there's a broad pattern here, and we look at how that is actually, or why these particular symptoms are coming together when we look at how it affects the brain. There's physical symptoms. So the body will respond to stress in ways that are designed to help you manage immediate threat. But it can be harmful if that stress is chronic. So it's prolonged, it's ongoing. We're constantly under this perceived threat. The short-term physical responses can include that kind of rapid heart rate we get, the elevated blood pressure, the rapid breathing, the shallow breathing. Your breathing will go from your diaphragm to chest breathing, muscle tension. So over time, that chronic stress can lead to things like tension headaches, sleep disturbances. Digestive problems is a massive one where people will have a tendency to cramp, to go to the loo more often, to have difficulty digesting their foods because that stress is getting in the way of the normal mechanical functions of the body. And over time, that can actually lead to a weakened immune system. So one of the signs that people will have that they can be under stress, particularly if they're working to something like a work timetable, is they'll be able to see that jeepers, I seem to be picking up every cough, cold going. I'm not quite able to shake this cold that I've had for an awful long time, which is quite unlike me. And I have been feeling very, very fatigued. And then behavioral changes can come in. So as you've been kind of undergoing those psychological symptoms and physiological symptoms in a complex environment that there's no kind of bridge out of at the moment, you're kind of seeped in it. Changes in behavior can include things like eating habits will change, your appetite will change. Now, some people undereat and some people overeat to combat those kind of negative feelings that they're having. So changes to your eating habits, increased use of alcohol, nicotine, withdrawal from social activities, usually because somebody's just not really feeling it. They're absolutely wiped, they're exhausted, and a decline in productivity at either work, school, or wherever it is that you're performing. So those are some of the signs in terms of recognizing it. Now, in the short term, stress can prepare the body to face immediate challenges, as we said, so those perceived threats. If you're driving your kids to school and a ball rolls out in front of the car, you get immediately stressed, but your reaction time is much quicker. Your cognitive function is much quicker. You're much sharper. You're much more alert. So it triggers that fight or flight response, which enhances alertness, energy, and the ability to respond to danger much, much quicker with good accuracy for the situation at hand. So short-term stress can be beneficial. It improves that cognitive performance and the motivating action. So when stress becomes constant and overwhelming, it can lead to anxiety, fatigue, decreased ability to function effectively in daily tasks. So that brings us onto the long-term arc. So when there's a long-term, what's called chronic stress, that's what people mean by the term chronic. It just means it's ongoing, it's ongoing. I know people from Cork will think chronic just means like, oh, jeepers, her outfit was chronic. But it can have really long-term effects on health. So psychologically, as we've touched on, it can really damage people's mental health in terms of anxiety disorders, depression, and other mental health issues. Physiologically, that exposure to the stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline over time can increase the risk of heart disease, blood pressure, hypertension, diabetes, and other chronic conditions. It can lead to weight gain, sleep problems, and a decline in sexual health. Behaviorally, long term, then, it can impact relationships, work performance, and overall quality of life. Now, let's have a quick look at how it can be helpful, because it can be helpful in particular situations where you do need that increase. So it does enhance performance in the short term by heightening that alertness and concentration. For example, the stress experience before presentation, sports events can mobilize that energy and sharpen focus. It improves efficiency and leads to better short-term performance. It also helps to serve as a motivator to complete tasks, meet deadlines, and solve problems. That pressure can actually push one to prioritize, organize, and act more efficiently than they would if they had like a rolling deadline. And obviously there's that survival point as well, the fight or flight response. Now, lots of people will say, I'm such a last minute person. And actually, that's exactly what the mechanism is happening there, is for people who have difficulty focusing, prioritizing, timekeeping, scheduling. That stress actually overrides all of the other difficulties they might have with timekeeping. And because of that cortisol jump and that adrenaline jump, it physiologically helps them to focus. So I know myself, when I was in college, I used to go, jeepers, why is it that I'm so good when it comes up to the last minute? But there could be all the minutes in the world leading up to it, and I find it so difficult to focus. And that's what that is. It's that surge in adrenaline and cortisol that actually helps our short-term productivity or short-term ability to focus. Now, on the flip side of that, of course, is not all good. And we've touched on that already in lots of different ways, but it's really the chronic health aspect of it that I want to focus on. So that prolonged stress can really, so it's weakened your immune system, but it's also leading to things like cardiovascular health disease, diabetes, depression, anxiety disorders. that stress hormone over a long time can wear down the body's systems, leading to very, very severe systematic damage. So that's kind of like, I know I'm kind of laying it on thick now with, we know stress is bad, but really it's to look at the cultural approaches to this, because depending on what generation you're from or what culture you're from, there's a tendency in particular, generational and cultural uh, slots, milieus, whatever the word is, in those particular ponds, to almost wear stress as a badge of honor, that, oh, I'm doing a good job, of course I'm stressed, I have a very important position, of course I'm stressed, or things like, well, everybody's stressed, get on with it. Those types of approaches that people can adopt from their family, their background, their generational age, or their position at work, that can really sometimes minimize the effects of stress that they have. So that's why I'm kind of laying it on thick a little bit now this morning with regards the chronic health conditions, the deterioration of immune system, the deterioration of cognitive performance, and the inability to make rational, good decisions. When the body's inclination towards stress outside of that immediate danger zone, so it can seem like that I'm presenting it as, okay, is the body tricking us? Like, we are in a very, very stressful environment. And yet our body tends to not really match that. So our bodies will perceive psychological danger in the same way as physical threat. So in that particular way, it brings on a stress response, just as if there was a very physical threat. Somebody coming at us with a knife can sometimes take the guise of an email that says, did you get my last email? Question mark, question mark, question mark. The body will go, same thing, both extremely dangerous. So that kind of that modern lifestyle with the constant barrage of demands and stimuli, that will contribute to chronic stresses. So the body's stress response is designed for short-term threats and is not well adapted to the continuous stressors of modern life. And I'm underlining that for the fact that we know that there's a kind of mismatch with our biological hardware and the software of modern life. We know there's a mismatch there. So it is it's imperative to overcorrect, basically, to not just trust our environment to, take the wheel and we'll see what happens. And sure, everybody's stressed now and then. There is a known mismatch between what we're able to cope with and what our environment is putting out. So in that particular instance, it's very, very important to overcorrect and have tips, tricks, and awareness around how to really look after that. So next little part for us is the brain bits. And I go into the brain bits with the express intention not to confuse anything and not to just throw about, brain parts, all these types of words, but really to give a good understanding of what is happening at a physiological, biological level, and why that will make more sense as to some of the reverse engineering tricks that I'll give in a minute. So I'll lay out what's happening and how those tricks are actually working with our pre-existing system. So I chat a lot about the amygdala, and the amygdala is going to come up, of course, when we talk about stress. So the amygdala is often termed the brain's alarm system. It plays a crucial role in processing emotional responses, including fear and including stress. So what it does is it alerts the rest of the brain to potential threats, prompting that stress response. So again, potential threats are not just physical threats. They're, oh God, I need to stand up and give a presentation. What if I look like a fool? People point at me, they laugh, and they say, we've never seen anybody so foolish in our lives, and you wet your pants, or something like that. So we catastrophize all these types of events. Basically, the brain is on a constant lookout with that amygdala for perceived threats. It will alert the rest of your brain. So then the prefrontal cortex is what I dub, and what lots of people dub, the CEO of the brain, the conductor, the one that sees the information and goes, where will I place this particular information? So it's responsible for decision making, social behavior, and it should, it is supposed to, when functioning correctly, modulate our response to stress. So what it does is it tries to interpret the messages it receives from the amygdala, and it looks to control the emotional intensity sent from the amygdala. You can start to see when there's chronic stress and chronic heightened threat responses that prefrontal cortex may not be functioning optimally, let's say. And then the other part involved is the hippocampus, which is essential for memory, learning, and it helps to contextualize that stress response. So it basically goes, we've seen this thing before. Remember last year when we had to give a presentation? Did it go well? No, it went terribly. So we're going to stimulate a stress response to match that because it's preempting a similar situation. Now, I'm giving negative context on purpose just for the sake of the stress response, but it's not always negative. So the mechanics of the stress response then are the interplay between the brain areas of the body's and the body's hormonal cascades. So you have the brain areas, and then they release the cortisol and the adrenaline. So that mechanism prepares the body to either confront. So we're going to fight, we're going to be more alert, we're much more adept at, swerving the car if that ball comes up, or flee, beeline out of the office and not give the presentation. So it either confronts or flees from confrontations and perceived threats. That system is honed for survival, but it's often overreacting because we have that modern, less physically threatening, more psychologically and emotionally threatening environment. So neuroplasticity then. Neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to rewire itself. Plasticity meaning it is not set in stone. It constantly reshapes itself according to the information we give it and what we choose to repeat. So it's the brain's ability basically to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. It plays a significant role in how repeated stress affects us because, again, repetition shapes the brain. Chronic stress can lead to structural and functional changes in the brain. Now, this is where I mentioned that prefrontal cortex and amygdala, and it's kind of giving us the picture of what's happening under the hood. So chronic stress, I'll say that part again, will lead to structural changes in the brain. It changes the shape of your brain, particularly shrinking that prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's usually responsible for decision making, weighing up pros and cons. I kind of imagine it as this fancy CEO with the mustache going, yes, this one. And at the same time, it enlarges the amygdala. So the alert system gets much, much bigger, much, much more reactive. That CEO gets much, much smaller. It makes individuals more susceptible to stress. So that same plasticity, I love this sounding doom and gloom now, but that same plasticity can actually be flipped. It can be flipped, it can be reversed, and engaging in stress management techniques that we'll mention further down can actually foster that positive change and reshape the brain areas that are responsible for stress control. And it will enhance an individual's resilience, which is a word that lots of people use in modern day because it's warranted, and reduces the impact of future stress. Now, I'll say here as well, identifying your personal stress triggers is really, really important. Self-awareness on all marks around this is really, really important. It will help to manage stress effectively. So really being aware of what you yourself, what kind of situations trigger that doom and gloom feeling for you, and being aware of that going into it and knowing where those are in your day are going to help an awful lot. But I'll skip on now to applying that knowledge. Right. So what are some of the techniques, knowing what we know about the brain, knowing what we know about the physiological short-term, long-term effects of stress, what can we do about it? So the first part will be any utilization of the word mindfulness. And I use that word quite loosely because I think some people will think of mindfulness as lotus pose, and that's not for everybody. But mindfulness is basically a comprehensive insight. So it's regularly checking inwards Just bringing your awareness from your mind, which could be going 90 miles an hour, just drop it into the body. That's all it is, that drop down, and giving yourself internal awareness, sometimes for 3 minutes, sometimes for 8 minutes, sometimes for 4 seconds, whatever you're capable of doing. So that regular mindfulness check-in with yourself fosters a state of calm and presence in the body, bringing yourself down from over agitated mind space things. But it also brings about structural changes in the brain, particularly in those regions we mentioned associated with stress and emotional regulation. So mindfulness increases gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex. So the practice of just giving yourself that time enhances cognitive control over stress response. So that CEO that got all shrunken down, all of a sudden he's back in the room. He's back in the room, baby, and he's making decisions. It helps to decrease that amygdala, that alert system. It helps to lower the reactivity to stress. So this dual action helps to decrease those cortisol levels and helps to bolster stress resilience. We're working against the environmental context that is very much against us overcorrecting by bringing up the prefrontal cortex, gray matter productivity, and shrinking down the alertness of the amygdala. So there's a tendency to want and need to overcorrect. It's just out there. Sorry, lads, it's 21st century living. We have to do some things to overcorrect. The other thing, which is absolutely brilliant, is physical activity. Now, physical activity serves as a natural stress counterbalance. What it does is it mimics the fight or flight response in a healthy way and engages the body to complete the stress loop. So remember I said about we're either going to fight the thing or we're going to run away from the thing. If you're exerting yourself physically, if you're running, if you're using weights, if you're doing anything like that, it basically, quote unquote, tricks the body into thinking it has completed the stress action. There's no longer any need to fire off. So exercise not only utilizes that circulating stress hormone that may already be in place as your day has gone on, but it also boosts the production of endorphins and enhances your mood and pain tolerance. So the physiological shift improves not only your cardiovascular resistance to stress, but reduces the overall impact on heart health. The other thing would be structured relaxation. So basically, techniques like deep breathing that we said, progressive muscle relaxation, where you tense every muscle in your body and then gradually release. That's absolutely brilliant. I used to do that going into presentations before a very bad stage fright. Tense every muscle in your body and release it. And it tricks, I hate to use the word trick, poor body. It tricks your body basically into going, okay, we've done the stressful thing and now we're relaxing. Similar to the exercise part of it. So engages the parasympathetic nervous system, which is a fancy way of saying the part of your nervous system that helps you to relax, and it promotes that state of relaxation and recovery. Things like yoga as well are brilliant for that. Those practices don't just lower physiological markers of stress, such as your heart rate and your blood pressure, but it also enhances awareness. Improved awareness of those bodily sensations will help in early stress recognition and management. Now, I'll actually do a little bit of a practical piece at the very end. Now I'm talking till the cows come home here to try and get as much as I can in. So healthy social connections will also be absolutely brilliant. They'll activate the brain's reward system pathways and stimulate the release of oxytocin, reducing the stress response. So positive meaning social interactions, chatting with friends, going out socially, even if you don't particularly feel like it, with people that you like, know, and trust, can help to decrease your system stress response. The oxytocin then, the neurochemical and physiological framework will underscore the importance of supportive social networks in lowering those stress hormone. Adequate sleep is really, 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 really important, because when there's high stress, there's poor sleep. When there's poor sleep, there's high stress. So it is a catch-22. It can be tricky when you are in one of those vicious cycles. It just means really, really looking after the digital detox aspect of it. Bring down your blue screen lights coming into your nighttime routine. Try to do things that have your eyes moving side to side. Things like reading can really, really help to bring the brain down a little bit coming into nighttime. And try to really prioritize sleep hygiene if you're really feeling stressed, because it will have a massive, massive knock-on effect in facilitating emotional and cognitive processing. So during your day, your stress levels are going to go down after a good night's sleep. Now, it can be a little bit tricky because stress does upset sleep cycle. It's just about prioritizing that a little bit more for the amount of days that it takes to come into back into a good sleep cycle. And then of course, look at there's the point as well where it's worth mentioning, like, do you need to have a chat with a professional? And is there somebody in your company that can do little chats around wellness, stress reduction, stress management? Is there a therapeutic aid in your company workplace? Someone to just really share that burden with, to alleviate some of the stressors that you have. Interventions with therapeutic professionals can fundamentally alter the brain's stress response after time, decreasing the intensity and frequency of stress reactions and facilitating a healthier management of life's challenges. So another part then that I'll touch on very, very briefly is high carb diet and stress. Low carb, low stress. Where basically high carb diets are like kindle to a fire for stress and anxiety. If there are high blood sugar fluctuations in high carb diet, especially those rich in refined sugars and grains, they can cause rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar levels. And those fluctuations will trigger a stress response in the body, leading to increased cortisol levels, which might exacerbate feelings of anxiety and irritability. They can disrupt the gut biome, leading to imbalances that affect mood and stress levels again. So the gut-brain axis plays a crucial role in the emotion regulation. So the imbalances that high processed carbohydrate foods cause in gut bacteria can contribute to heightened stress responses. And they also lead to dependency. So high carb foods, particularly when somebody's stressed, tend to be craved. They kind of offer a very, very quick release of stress because they fire off endorphins, but that leads to a vicious cycle of consuming high amounts of carbohydrates, especially refined sugars, will have that dependency aspect of it. So the cycle will affect emotional well-being and stress levels because of the upping and downing of the blood sugar levels, and can lead to very, very short mood boost and a very, very hard mood crash afterwards. So you can see how it promotes that vicious cycle of reaching for high carbohydrate foods, whereas low carb diet help exponentially for stress management in stabilizing those blood sugar levels, reducing those spikes that can occur, which will basically give steadier energy levels, mood, and can help to reduce stress and anxiety. It's going to enhance brain function by reducing the carb intake. The body will increase its efficiency in using other fuel sources. It'll reduce the inflammation and improve gut health and improve that gut health microbiome. And then last little part is enabling relaxation questions. So little practical exercises for those of you going, great, how do I find, I can recognize that I'm stressed. What can I do to counteract it? And this will tie into that structured stress combating behaviors. So really asking yourself and giving yourself a moment, instead of just thinking that these periods will arrive in your life, that we have a tendency to over schedule, put lots of things, try to get as much into our day as possible. Structure out a little bit of time for yourself and ask yourself what activities make you feel the most at peace and why. Give yourself a list. These are things I'm going to do. Historically, these have helped me reduce my stress levels. What enables a sense of relaxation, what enables a sense of carefreeness, what enables a sense of lightness in activities that you've done before, and schedule those in for yourself. Do certain environments help you? Do certain settings, is it going for a walk somewhere where there's nature? Is it hearing waves crash? Are there particular things that you can make space for in your week? Because it's incredibly important with all of the bits we've mentioned today, not just cognitively, but heart health, immune system, decision-making abilities. All of these things are really, really crucial to time into your week for yourself, for your well-being, for your ability to perform, for your ability to experience life to the best that you can. Now, I'm going to unplug because I feel like one of those people, auctioneers, going to like blah, 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 blah. So that was a lot of bit about managing stress. So if you go back over the video, there's the part on recognizing stress, how it is helpful, how it is harmful, the parts of the brain that are active in the stress response, and what we can do to apply that knowledge with using scientifically proven methods to leverage and reverse engineer some of the stress responses. There's a part on low carb eating, low stress, and a few questions at the end to enable relaxation. I hope you haven't found this video too stressful. Andrew will be back with you guys next week, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much. And where's my little bit for the end of the webinar? Aha, there we go. Mind yourselves, and we chat to you in 2 weeks' time. Bye now.